You don't notice waitresses unless something goes wrong. We're meant to blend in with the tablecloths. Smile. Step back. Disappear. I was clearing a table when I saw him, sitting too still, like movement might kill him. Blood had soaked through his collar, dark and quiet. He looked expensive. Dangerous. Out of place. Then I saw the door. 3 men stood outside the glass, weapons low but ready. They weren't rushing. That scared me more than shouting ever could. Jun Pyong lifted his eyes to mine. There was pain there, yes, but also command. Like he was used to rooms obeying him. Please, he said. I smelled gun oil through the door. Heard my own heartbeat pounding louder than the fridge behind the counter. That was the moment. The moment where I could have walked away and stayed invisible. Instead, I knelt in front of him, pressed my hands to his bleeding chest, and pulled him closer to the shadows between the tables, into the space no one ever looks at. The door handle turned, and I understood something terrible. I hadn't just saved a man. I had stepped into his war. If you're enjoying this story and want more high-stakes drama, secret identities, and unforgettable twists, support the channel right now. Like this video to tell us you want more stories like this. Comment below. Your thoughts help shape what we create next. And subscribe so you never miss a new upload as we keep growing together. Your support keeps these stories alive. Now, let's begin. The restaurant always smelled like bleach and burnt coffee at closing time, a sharp, honest scent that told the truth about how long a place had been standing. I liked that hour, when the city outside softened and the room belonged to me. White tablecloths lay rumpled like surrendered flags. Wine glasses caught the light and held it. I moved between tables with a rag in my hand, invisible, efficient, forgettable. That was the job. That was the safety of it. The bell above the door rang once, softly, wrong for that hour. He staggered in, as if the night had pushed him forward. Tall. Well-dressed. Bleeding. The dark stain on his collar spread slowly, like it was thinking about it. He didn't fall. He chose a chair and sat, breathing through his nose, eyes sharp despite the pain. Expensive suit. Italian leather shoes. The kind of man who didn't belong in a place like mine unless something had gone very wrong. I told myself to call an ambulance. I told myself to stay behind the counter. Then I saw the headlights. They stopped outside, engines idling. 3 shadows moved behind the glass, patient, deliberate. Men who expected obedience. Men who didn't knock. The wounded man lifted his gaze to me. There was no panic there, only calculation and something heavier beneath it. Authority. He opened his mouth, then closed it, like he understood how dangerous words could be. Please, he said quietly. That was the moment my life split. Before and whatever came after. I crossed the room before my fear caught up. Knelt in front of him. The blood was warm when I pressed my hands to his chest, slick against my palms. He hissed once but didn't pull away. I pulled him down, guiding him into the narrow space between tables, where shadows tangled and sightlines failed. Stay still, I whispered, surprised by my own steadiness. The door handle turned. Once. Twice. I stood, smoothing my apron, forcing my shoulders loose. When the men entered, the room seemed to shrink around them. They smelled like rain and metal. One of them smiled at me, as if I were furniture. Evening, he said. We're looking for someone. I met his eyes and shook my head. We're closed. Behind me, blood dripped onto white linen. And for the first time in my life, being unseen felt like a weapon. My heart hammered, but my face stayed calm, practiced from years of service smiles. I pointed to the empty tables, the stacked chairs, the clock on the wall ticking loud enough to accuse us all. The man with the smile followed my gesture, bored already. He didn't see the space between tables. He didn't see the shadow breathing. He didn't see me at all, and that was the miracle. The door closed behind them with a soft click, sealing the lie inside the room. I exhaled slowly, knowing the night had only just begun for us both. Alone together. The moment the door shut, the room exhaled with me. Silence rushed in, thick and fragile. I dropped beside him again, hands shaking now that no one was watching. Blood soaked through my napkins too fast. I pressed harder, trying to remember anything useful I'd learned from television, from late-night reruns and half-listened news. "You shouldn't have done that," he said. His voice was calm, almost gentle, which somehow made it worse. "I know," I replied. "Don't talk." He watched me anyway, dark eyes tracking every movement. Up close, he was younger than I'd first thought, his composure worn like armor learned early. The cut on his chest was ugly, but clean. A bullet graze, maybe. Lucky in a brutal way. I dragged a chair closer, blocking the sight line from the door, then tore a strip from a tablecloth. He noticed, the corner of his mouth lifting faintly. "You'll get in trouble." I shrugged. "I always do." Outside, engines roared to life and faded. Not gone. Just circling. I felt it in my bones. Predators don't leave until they're certain. "What's your name?" he asked. I hesitated. Names were currency. Still, it slipped out.
Barbara.
Barbara Collins. He repeated it softly, like he was committing it to memory. "Thank you, Barbara." Something about the way he said it tightened my chest. Gratitude, real and rare. I cleaned the wound as best I could, fingers steady again. When I met his gaze, he studied me with unsettling focus. "They will come back," he said. "When they do, they won't ask." "Who are they?" I asked. For the first time, he looked away. "Men who think I'm already dead," he answered. The truth landed heavy. I stared at him, really seeing the suit, the posture, the absence of fear. "And who are you?" He leaned back with a hiss of pain, then met my eyes fully. Whatever mask he wore slipped, just enough. "My name is Jun Pyong," he said. "And tonight, you saved my life." The words didn't feel heroic. They felt like a sentence. Glass rattled faintly as a car passed too close outside. I moved instinctively, positioning myself between him and the door. He noticed that too. "You're brave," he said. "No," I answered. "I'm careful." He smiled, then a small, dangerous curve. "So am I." In that quiet, blood-stained room, an understanding settled between us. I would hide him. He would survive. And nothing about my invisible life would ever be the same again. The city kept breathing beyond the walls, unaware of the choice taking shape inside. I could feel the weight of it pressing down, heavy and irreversible. Somewhere, men were reloading guns, making calls, adjusting plans. I tied the final knot tight, wiped my hands on my apron, and stood. If this was the moment everything broke, then I would meet it standing, eyes open, unseen but unafraid. Because some nights choose you, and survival depends on answering back without hesitation. Or mercy. They came back before dawn because men like that hate unfinished business. I was refilling the sugar jars when the first knock hit the glass, polite and loud at once. Jun Pyong stiffened behind the counter, pain tightening his jaw, but his eyes were clear. He trusted me now, and that terrified me more than the guns. I wiped my hands and walked to the door. 3 men again, different coats, same patience. One of them smiled like he remembered me. "We're worried," he said. "Our friend is hurt." "There's no one here," I replied. My voice didn't shake. That surprised us both.
He leaned closer to the glass.
"We can hear breathing." So could I. The room seemed to pulse with it. I laughed softly, the sound thin but convincing. "You're hearing the fridge. It does that." Behind me, Jun Pyong shifted, then stopped. Silence locked into place. The man's smile thinned. He tested the handle.
"Locked."
"You're making a mistake," he said. I thought about my rent, my uniform, the way people spoke over me like I was air. "I make them every day." They left without breaking the door, which felt like mercy until Jun Pyong spoke. "They'll burn this place," he said. "Or wait until you're alone." That was when fear finally caught me. I leaned against the counter, breathing hard. "Then we move you." He studied the exits, the windows, the narrow hallway to the kitchen. "You shouldn't follow me." "I already did," I said. Sirens wailed far away. He touched my wrist, brief and steady. "If you walk away now, I will not blame you." I met his gaze. "If I walk away, They'll kill you here. Understanding passed between us, heavy and precise. Outside, a car door slammed. I grabbed my coat, killed the lights, and guided him toward the back, where deliveries came and no one ever looked twice. As we slipped into the alley, the city swallowed us whole, and I knew there was no version of my life that went back to normal after this night ended. The alley smelled like damp cardboard and old secrets. Jun Pyong leaned on me as we moved, his weight controlled but weakening. The city watched without caring. That was its gift and its curse. Headlights passed. Footsteps echoed. No one stopped us. Why me? I asked quietly. He smiled without humor. Because you were there. We reached my car, a dented thing I'd stopped being embarrassed about years ago. I helped him into the passenger seat and drove without headlights until the streetlights thinned. My hands ached from gripping the wheel. Every mirror felt like an accusation. You should leave the city, he said. So should you. He was quiet for a long moment. They think I'm weak, he said. Dead men are useful. I pulled into an abandoned lot near the river. He pressed a hand to his wound, breathing carefully. The blood was slower now, darker. June, I said. Saying his name felt dangerous. What happens next? He looked at me with the full weight of who he was. Next, they learn I survived. The words chilled me. And me. You remain invisible, he said. Unless you choose otherwise. That choice settled inside me, heavy and calm. I had lived unseen my whole life. I understood shadows. I choose to help, I said. Something like respect crossed his face. He reached into his jacket and placed a phone in my hand. Then listened carefully. As dawn crept over the river, Jun Pyong began to speak. Names, places, alliances cracking at the seams. I realized I wasn't just hiding him. I was standing at the edge of a war, holding the first secret that could end it. They took me in daylight because that's when people are most confident nothing bad will happen. I was leaving my apartment with the trash, still wearing my work shoes, when a black sedan rolled to a stop like it belonged there. No screeching tires. No rush. A man stepped out and smiled the way men do when they already own the ending. Barbara Collins, he said. Not a question. I dropped the trash bag. He caught my elbow gently, steering me toward the car, as if helping a neighbor. Anyone watching would have thought I was being escorted, not stolen. That was the cruelty of it. Inside, the air smelled like leather and restraint. The door closed. Locks clicked. My heart didn't race. It slowed, heavy with the understanding I'd been waiting for this moment since the diner. They blindfolded me, but didn't hurt me. That was worse. When the blindfold came off, I was in a warehouse by the river. June had mentioned the river. I almost smiled. A man sat across from me, older, precise, his suit immaculate. Power sat on him like it had grown there. You hit him, he said calmly. We know. I didn't answer. You are very ordinary, he continued, which makes you useful. He slid a phone across the table. On the screen was Jun Pyong, caught on a street camera hours earlier. Alive. Walking. They want proof, the man said. You will call him. You will tell him to come. And if I don't, he smiled. Then you disappear. Quietly. The city will not notice. There it was. The doubled stake. It was no longer about hiding June. It was about becoming the bait that would draw him into the open. I took the phone. My hands were steady. June answered on the second ring. Barbara, he said, already alert. They have me, I said. They want you. Silence stretched, tight as wire. Then, softly, where? I gave him the location. The man across from me nodded in approval, already picturing the outcome. A king stepping into a cage to save a waitress. No one would remember. After they left me alone, fear finally came. It sat with me in the empty room, whispering endings. I thought about my life, how small it had been, how carefully I'd stayed out of the way. I understood then that invisibility had only ever been a pause, not protection. Hours later, gunshots shattered the quiet. Not chaos. Precision. By the time the door opened again, Jun Pyong stood there, bloodied but unbowed, eyes dark with something colder than fear. "I told you not to follow me," he said. I laughed, shaky and alive. "You followed me." He helped me to my feet. Outside, the river kept moving, carrying secrets away. Around us lay the evidence of a miscalculation. They had assumed mercy made him weak. They were wrong. Jun didn't run after that. That was the first sign everything had changed. We moved through safe houses and quiet rooms, but the energy was different now, deliberate, coiled. He wasn't hiding anymore. He was preparing. I watched him make calls, issue instructions, rebuild an empire piece by piece from the shadows. And still, to everyone else, I was just a waitress. That was the part no one understood. I sat in corners, poured coffee, listened. Men talked freely around me, dismissing my presence like background music. They argued about territories, about who had betrayed whom, about how Jun Pyong would strike next. They never once lowered their voices because of me. At night, Jun would ask what I'd heard. I told him everything. "You see patterns," he said once. "People ignore patterns." "I've had practice," I replied. The enemy moved fast, trying to erase mistakes. But they were loud, angry, predictable. Jun let them believe he was reacting when, in truth, he was guiding them exactly where he wanted. One evening, he handed me a folder. Inside were photos, names, proof. "You could walk away," he said. "This ends badly for people near me." I looked at the papers, at the web of corruption and violence they mapped. "It already ended badly," I said. "I'm just choosing what happens next." Something shifted between us then. Not romance, not yet, but recognition. He no longer looked at me as someone to protect. He looked at me as someone to trust. The final meeting was set in a private restaurant overlooking the city. Neutral ground. That was the lie everyone agreed on. Jun arrived in a tailored suit, whole again, powerful enough to draw every rival into the room. I arrived later, in uniform, head down, carrying trays.
They talked,
Threatened, negotiated. No one watched me. When Jun gave the signal, a slight tilt of his glass, I placed the folder on the table and stepped back. "What's this?" someone scoffed. Jun stood. The end. Sirens bloomed outside. Doors slammed open. The room exploded into motion, panic, rage, realization dawning too late. I stayed still, invisible. As men were dragged away, Jun turned to me. The city's lights framed him like a crown. "You rewrote the board," he said quietly. I met his gaze, calm and unafraid. I just paid attention. When it was over, when the underworld reshaped itself around his survival, Jun Pyong offered me a place beside him. I considered it. Then I smiled. "I'll decide." For the first time in my life, the choice was mine, and the city, finally, had no idea what to do with me. After the arrests, the city exhaled, but not in relief. Power vacuums never bring peace. They bring appetite. Jun Pyong understood that better than anyone. Survival was only the first chapter. Control required something colder than violence. Narrative. Whoever told the story of what happened would decide who was hunted next. That became my work. I went back to the diner. Same uniform, same apron, same practice smile. The place reopened under new ownership within a week, as if blood could be scrubbed from memory with enough bleach. Men came in groups now, lawyers, businessmen, low-level enforcers, pretending they were just hungry. They talked when they thought no one important was listening. They always talked. I listened. Every word felt like a thread, and I learned how to pull without tugging. A name dropped casually. A meeting mentioned as a complaint. A sudden silence when a particular figure was referenced. At night, I wrote everything down from memory, careful not to leave evidence behind. Jun never asked how I remembered so much. He trusted that I did. Once, he watched me across a room filled with men who would have killed me without hesitation if they knew my value. "They still don't see you," he said. "That's the point," I replied. "But invisibility has a cost." Some nights, I stood in the bathroom after my shift and stared at my reflection, trying to recognize the woman I was becoming. I wasn't afraid anymore. Fear had burned off, leaving something sharper behind.
Purpose, maybe.
Or hunger. The enemy factions began turning on each other, exactly as Jun predicted. Each believed the others were leaking information. No one suspected the waitress pouring their drinks. Then the betrayal surfaced. A name I recognized too well, one of Jun's oldest allies, a man who had survived 3 regimes and sold loyalty like currency. He planned to trade Jun's location for immunity. When I told Jun, he didn't react at first. He just nodded, absorbing the truth. He taught me how to win, he said quietly. Now he'll teach me how to end this. The final meeting was arranged with care. Neutral ground again. A test of faith. I served wine, my hand steady, my presence dismissed. When the traitor leaned close to Jun, whispering assurances, I caught the flicker in his eyes, the calculation, the relief. He thought he was safe. Jun let him finish speaking before he stood. You taught me everything, he said, except how to disappear. Men moved. Guns raised. The traitor's face collapsed in understanding. I stepped back into the shadows as he was taken away, screaming promises no one intended to keep. That night, Jun Pyong became undisputed. And I understood something essential. The most dangerous person in any room isn't the one holding the weapon. It's the one everyone forgot to watch. Power, once claimed, demands maintenance. Jun Pyong's empire didn't roar back to life. It tightened. Borders drawn cleanly. Rules enforced without spectacle. Violence, when necessary, was swift and quiet. Fear worked better when it didn't announce itself. I moved through this new order like a ghost with purpose. Some men began to notice patterns, meetings interrupted by arrests, deals collapsing before signatures dried, but they drew the wrong conclusions. They suspected rivals, lovers, brothers. Never the woman refilling glasses, never the one standing patiently with a notepad. That changed the night. Everything almost fell apart. The restaurant was higher end this time, glass walls overlooking the city, the kind of place where decisions were made softly and money insulated consequences. I wore a different uniform, borrowed, anonymous. Jun sat at the table with 3 men who smiled too much. One of them watched me closely. Too closely. Who's she? He asked. A waitress, Jun replied easily. The man's eyes lingered. She's listening. I froze internally, my face blank. Years of practice held. I always am, I said politely. Would you like more wine? Silence stretched. Then laughter. The man waved me off. The moment passed, but not without consequence. That was the first crack. Later that night, as Jun and I walked through a secured corridor, he stopped. It's time, he said. For what? For you to be seen. The words unsettled me. Visibility was exposure. Exposure was death. Not yet, I said. They're not ready. He studied me. You are. I wasn't sure he was right, but the board had shifted again. The enemies were fewer, smarter, and desperate. Invisibility alone would no longer be enough. The final confrontation came sooner than expected. A coordinated strike. Multiple locations. An attempt to decapitate what remained of Jun's control. Chaos bloomed across the city in pockets of violence and sirens. I was in the wrong place at the right time, caught by men who finally understood who I was. They dragged me into a back room, weapons drawn, fury replacing arrogance. You, one of them spat. You did this. I met his gaze without flinching. No, I said. You did. Jun arrived minutes later, too late to stop the beating, just in time to stop the execution. Blood blurred my vision as he knelt beside me. This ends now, he said, not to them, but to the city. That night, evidence I had collected for months went public. Names. Accounts. Crimes tied neatly together. Not leaks, confessions forced into daylight. The remaining enemies fell not to bullets, but to exposure. By morning, the war was over. Jun Pyong stood at the window of a quiet room, watching the city pretend nothing had changed. They'll tell stories about me, he said. They won't tell yours. I wiped blood from my lip and smiled faintly. Good. But invisibility, I had learned, is only power when you choose it. And I was done being chosen for. The city settled into a new rhythm, as cities always do after violence. Streets reopened. Businesses resumed. People spoke in careful tones about what had happened, already filing it away as rumor, as something distant and unprovable. Jun Pyong remained. Not louder, not crueler, just absolute. He offered me a place at his side, not as decoration, not as a secret, but as something rare in his world. An equal voice. Offices. Security. A future drawn in clean lines and quiet authority. I thought about it longer than he expected. Power is seductive. It promises safety, meaning, permanence. But it also demands visibility, and visibility carries a cost I finally understood too well. I don't want a throne, I told him. I want a door.
He didn't argue.
That was how I knew he respected the answer. I left the city a week later. No goodbyes. No ceremony. Just a suitcase and a train ticket bought in cash. Jun made no attempt to stop me. He simply pressed a card into my hand before I boarded. If you ever need me, he said, I will answer. I believed him. In the new place, I found work easily. People always need someone who listens. I chose obscurity again, but this time it was deliberate. I knew what I was capable of now. I knew the weight of attention and how sharp it could be. Some nights, I still dreamed of white tablecloths and blood blooming like secrets. Other nights, I slept without memory. The world never learned my name. They spoke of Jun Pyong as a myth, a shadow king who survived death and bent the underworld back into shape. They never mentioned the waitress, the woman who knelt in front of him and chose action over safety. That was fine. I didn't need recognition. I had something better. Knowledge. Knowledge that invisibility isn't weakness, that silence can be a weapon, that the smallest choices can unmake empires. Years later, sitting alone in a quiet cafe far from that city, I poured coffee for a stranger and caught my reflection in the glass. Older.
Calmer.
Still unseen. I smiled. Some stories are told loudly, with gunfire and headlines. Others move quietly, refilling cups, listening carefully, waiting for the exact moment to step forward. Mine was the second kind, and it changed everything. If that ending stayed with you, if your chest tightened, if your mind replayed the silence after the storm, then don't let the story end here. Sparkles like this video sow stories like this keep finding their way to you. Speech balloon comment what moment hit you the hardest. Your voice matters more than you think. Bell subscribe and turn on notifications because the next story may arrive quietly, but it will change everything. Stories like this survive because you choose to stay. Stay with us. Stay with the vault.